Hello to everyone watching. My name is Sanelisiwe Sanani Mapolisa, also known as SASA, and this is my journey with God. Miss Kelly, also Sanelisiwe, has asked me or sent me a couple of questions, but because of distance, she's not here. So I asked my father to read aloud my questions for me, and then I'll be answering them for you. You may go ahead.
Okay, tell us where you're from and when you started your personal journey with God.
Right. I'm from East London. I'm currently in East London and I'm from East London, born and raised here. Obviously, I moved to Cape Town, then we migrated back as a family. And my journey with God started at the tender age of 12 years old. Growing up, our parents at the beginning of every year, we used to have a revival. So I spent my tender age growing up in a revival, listening to pastors preach. So then I got saved and I made the decision to get saved. And I believe, looking back now, that it was at such an opportune time because during that time, it's preteen years, you're trying to figure out who you are, where you fit in, and even in your family. I was, such a loner child. My parents were busy. My brother had his own friends, so I was very much a loner. So I believe in that time he became my closest friend and I wanted to know more about him because I had so much time on my hands. So I wanted to know more about him and I invested so much time in learning about God and my mind growing, in the presence of God through his word. And obviously as the years go by, the journey changes or it grows and there are new seasons. I always say that there are stages in my life where it's almost as if God erases the idea I have of him and then he reintroduces himself in a new way. And that has been continuous. And I know it's a good thing. Whenever I feel like I don't know God, I know that, okay, a new season is entering. And it's a good thing because it means there is still a hunger for me to know him more. And the relationship or the communion to grow to another level. So that is my journey with God, obviously. As I get into different environments, it also changes. When I meet new leaders and pastors, it changes according to the impartation of that place. But right now, I'm still here, still say that he's my closest friend, still believe he's my, confidant love of my life. But yeah, that's my journey with God. Next question.
Okay, then who inspires you as a person the most and why?
All right. I always thought I was weird as a person because I don't have a single person that I've looked up to growing up or someone I've looked up to growing up or someone I would idolized. I pick and choose certain characteristics from different people around me, but my most common answer growing up was my parents. My father, I admire my father's work ethic. I don't think there is anyone I know that works that hard, unnecessarily so. But it's because I asked him one day, why do you work so hard? And he says he has a fear of failure. So that was interesting. But I love my father's work ethic. With my mother was always true to herself, no matter where you put her. Or what environment she was in. She was so genuine in who she was and what she believed in. And she stood firm in that. And as a result, you knew when she said something, it is what it is. And I admire that about her. I admire her genuine nature. And then there are obviously people that I've come across in my path. Women, I love women who are in powerful positions but are gentle at the same time. I admire Sarah Jakes, a popular one. And then there's obviously women in my close setting, without big names, but who they are, their natures, their relationships with God, their work ethic, their careers. I look at those things, I pick and choose and I pinpoint what I love and I follow pursuit. So yeah.
As a pastor's kid, what are the most challenges that you had to face from a personal point, from the church and from your parents?
All right. I think holistically, before I answer each one, holistically, they don't teach you this, but you learn about selflessness before you even learn about identity. Growing up, I always say this, and I think I've even written about it on my Facebook, that I've always seen my parents giving externally, providing for the church, providing for people, doing their all, or providing by all means their all, so that people can be comfortable and established in the church, God's work can, go forward. And I've seen them doing this to the point where it's self-sacrificial, where they are willing to set aside their needs, the family's needs, the children's needs. So indirectly, I learned selflessness before identity. So I knew to give before I knew to be selfish, And then as the years go on, when you finally realize the environment you're in, personally, it took a while for me to even know the dynamics of being a PK, because unfortunately for me, I got to know God privately, first for myself, and I got to walk with him on my own journey, being this weird child that I was. And then I realized the effects of it afterwards when I stand now and I look back, and even now, you start to realize this selflessness is good to a certain extent, whereas without going in depth, you learn that you have to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet. Secondly, to surround yourself with people that understand your nature, so that they can't take advantage of your nature, because you grow up learning to give. It's inherent in you, and you see your parents giving to such an extent where there are people who are out there who are willing to take advantage. And you have to learn, to draw the line sometimes, because when people are in an environment where they're giving, the people they give to at times have an entitlement to the giver. So they're entitled to your parents, they are entitled to your parents' salaries, they are entitled to your parents' time, and you have to draw the line, but you're not entitled to me. I am my own person. I am my own individual. I need my space. I am born into, a church, but I'm not part of the church. I do not come with the church, nor are you entitled to my time, my energy, my services, my kindness. And sometimes it's difficult for your parents to draw the line for you, because they need all hands on deck. So you grow up to an extent where, in other cases, psychologically speaking, people translate this identity crisis as rebellion, whereas I believe that most of the times at a younger age, it's more of trying to find yourself outside of the church and trying to establish your own identity. Because I had a conflict recently with sisters and Gonzane. You even argue about your spaces, and it was Konzela. When the church started, we were fellowshipping from our home, and you're even sensitive about your room, because growing up you had to even share your room. So now, as at this age, you are sensitive about your space, you are sensitive about what you give, and you give generously to those who are able to reciprocate. Not that you're expecting it, but you're able to give generously to hands that are also willing to reciprocate, because you know that awuzuphelelwa, and nabo they're gonna be there for you to also banqande whenever they see that you are crossing the line. This is personally, and then you get to a sphere of also figuring out who you are outside of the church, who you are outside of your parents, who you are outside of abazalwane, trying to remove yourself from the environment so that when you come back in, you know exactly where you fit in and what role you are there to play. And you are working in accordance to the will of God, and not just your parents as well, not just the will of abazalwane, because you don't want to now become a people pleaser. And then with regards to my family, having to differentiate home and church, I think that's one thing I had to separate in my mind. I first had to separate that this is my home, this is where I get to be comfortable, this is where I get to be myself and grow and show all my flaws, and if I need to rebel, rebel. But if I don't know something, this is a place to ask. If I don't want to participate in something, this is a place to communicate, and establishing a relationship with my parents, not as pastors, but as my parents, establishing that relationship, and that understanding that when I'm at home, who my parents are, who I am, who my brother is at home is not who we are at church. And as differentiating that, you treat you separate the two areas of your life, because if you're not integrated, there are going to be aspects where you won't even develop properly into who you need to be, because you're trying to be someone you're not yet. I always say that it is God that makes us into who we need to be. It is not ourselves. So if you find yourself treating your family or your home as a church, you develop according to who you think God will want you to be instead of who he needs you to be. Yes. And then with a church, I said it even at the beginning, I think it's so important, outside of your parents doing it for you to establish that, yes, you are entitled to my family, you are entitled, to my parents, you're entitled to my parents' time, but you're not entitled to me. I am still, I was born luckily as a blessing, I was born into this family, but there's a lot that this family gives out. And I need to find a way to establish what is my own, what is my identity. Within being taught subconsciously how to be selfless, I have to establish my identity. I have to establish who I am. Even at church, I'm not, although parents do require us to work at church, I'm not required to, unless it's something within me to serve, because you need for God to plant a seed in you for you to want to serve, for you to be effective in the areas that you're serving in. And if it's something that is forced upon you, you'll never be effective, or it'll never be internal. Like it's not going to be from a personal encounter with God, and therefore your relationship will never really grow, because now you are pushed into this. Just like in church, abazalwane, we love abazalwane, but you have to remind them that you're not entitled to us, our time, our lives. We are still trying to figure everything out. And by the grace of God, we have been carried thus far. But yeah, I think that's everything. Yeah, move on. Next question.
What advice would you give to other kids that are still young and also PKs?
For me, I'm always going to suggest giving your life first to God. And it's going to be difficult because you have so many voices speaking. Your pastors are your parents. So they sometimes want to bring church home, and it's like, no. So establishing your own relationship with God. Finding out who God is for you, because I found from a lot of my fundamental principles come from my basic relationship with God, my younger relationship with God, discovering who I am through God, discovering my path and how I want to live my salvation through him, how he speaks to me in the journey. And then from there, I respect my parents' views. I respect their teachings as long as I'm under their roof or under their, church. Because whatever church you're in, you respect whatever they place as rules. So I respect their rules, but establishing my own relationship with God. And I would suggest you do the same. Establish your own relationship with God. Find out who God is to you and have an encounter with him that's personal, and a personal conviction with who God is and how he wants you to lead your life, so that you're not easily influenced by those around you. You do not need to make anyone around you happy as long as you are in the will of God. Even your parents, sometimes you might not be of one accord. Although it is important to respect their wishes, it's also important to know what it is that God has, predestined for you. And I am an advocate for finding your identity at a young age, because I think that's the most, that's when you know yourself the most. Although people say that you only figure yourself as an adult, a child knows what they like and what they don't like. And I think that's the most crucial time, even when you're growing up, even in your teen years, it's the most crucial time, because that's when you are setting the foundation for who you're going to be as an adult. Next question.
What Bible scriptures speak to you the most at the moment, and why?
Oh, this is an interesting one, because I found out that it's the one my mom also got saved to. A couple of years ago, the Bible verse that says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. I love that verse, because it basically teaches you that God is the source of all things. Before this specific verse, he talks about how he provides, for all creation. And so if he provides for all creation, when we are in him, they don't even need to, birds and, creatures don't need to even work, and they have everything provided for them. So when we place ourselves in God and we abide in him, he provides in all other spheres. There are things that we don't even know we need that he knows, because he created us, before the foundations of the earth. He created us. So he knows what we need. He knows who we are meant to be. For I know the plans I have for you, plans not to harm you, but to prosper you. He knows the plans he has set for your life. He knows why he created you and where you're supposed to be. So when we are in him, when we abide in him, and we seek him, he says, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be open, ask and you shall be given. When we seek him and we look for him, everything else in our lives, without even us asking, he provides for it. So I didn't even know. I told my mom, because I shared the verse, and how it spoke to me, and she was like, that's the verse she got saved to. So it was a very interesting dynamic, and I didn't know it. So that's my favorite verse.
It's not too soon. How has life been coping without your best friend, which is your mom?
I realized only after my mom passed that she was my friend, like my best friend. I'm like my mom. My mom, she's agreeable to everyone, but she keeps very few people close. So I'm similar to that, and I realized that she was my closest friend at that time. And it didn't kick in up until, when I started healing. Then I had, news to share, or something would happen, graduating, or like any achievement I would want to talk to her first. I would want to have a phone call with her, because we'd be on the phone call for hours just talking when I was in peace. So, it's redefining friendship. I had to learn how to redefine friendships outside of my mom, and I had to invest in my friendships outside of my mom, establishing my friendships of people that are already in my life, that God has placed there, because there are people God places in your life, and valuing them and making time for them, because I'm not a sociable person. I like my own time. I'm very much toward myself. But now rediscovering how to invest in communication and in friendships and being there for others as I expect them to be there for myself. So that's what I had to learn how to do. And then secondly, most importantly, is depending solely on my God. I always knew when my mom was around that if there was something I needed prayer with, my mom was my prayer partner. We prayed about everything together. So I think God, being selfish, was like, I want you to myself. Because sometimes when you have someone spiritually mature, you tend to rely more on their God than your own God. So I had to reestablish my reliance on my God and know that when I pray to him, he hears me and he answers me. And that if I go to him, I don't need anyone else. Although, when two or more gather, he answers and he hears us. But I need to establish my personal relationship and trust in him and rely on him heavily. So that's what I've learned. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Also, what advice would you give to a 12-year-old?
The age I got saved. Say it again. I stay on this. Find God. Get saved. Take the decision. It's the best decision I have ever made. Oh, girl, like I still say this, my parents were very busy, so I was alone a lot of the time, and there's a lot of things I could have dabbled in and gone into. But a lot of who I am today and what has made me and molded me to who I am is my fundamental relationship with God. That is the best time to learn about God. That is the best time to meet him, and he will definitely teach you and speak to you, and, show you who you need to be, how you need to be it, and where you need to go moving forward. So a 12-year-old, get saved. Like, I don't know what else I could say. It worked for me, and I promise you it'll work for you as well. Yeah.
Thank you. That's it.
We're good. Okay.